Vive le Québec! Vive le Québec libre!
Gloomy economic times attract social instability and uncertainty in what tomorrow will bring. For Canada's mostly French-speaking province of Quebec, that means agitation for separation is stirring yet again.
Je l'ai dit pendant la campagne. Je l'ai dit avant la campagne. Je vous le redis ce soir. J'ai la conviction que l'avenir du Québec, c'est de devenir un pays souverain.
It seems that the only ones who are once again brewing up agitation for the separation of Quebec are the left-wing neo-socialist bourgeois class who are at the helm of Quebec's sovereignty movement, case being the Parti québécois. Some of the Parti québécois' most influential members can be traced back to the Marxist communist movement that terrorized Quebec in the late 60s and 70s, otherwise known as the Front de Libération du Québec, aka the FLQ.
As voters head to the polls, it's a three-way fight to be the dominant force in Quebec's parliament, with emotions running high.
Even though the polls and political analysis projected a three-way fight between the Parti québécois with a projection of 57 seats, the Parti libéral du Québec with 44 seats, and the newly formed Coalition Avenir Québec, the September 4, 2012 Quebec election night, as it turned out, was the closest election race ever to be held in Quebec. The voting results gave the Parti québécois a small majority with 54 seats, followed by the Liberals with 50 seats, while the Coalition Avenir Québec could only muster 19 seats. Far from being a close race as projected by polls and analysts.
Quebec is $184 billion in debt.
Quebec's sovereign debt has now reached the $253 billion mark and counting. It is important to note that Quebec's sovereign debt does not take into account Quebec's share of the Canadian federal debt. Quebec's sovereign debt includes the government of Quebec's debt of $155 billion, privately owned Quebec government subsidized Hydro-Quebec debt of $40 billion, Quebec municipalities who have a shared debt of $21.4 billion, Quebec's baby boomers retirement package that stands at $28 billion, and finally Quebec's subsidized university with a $1.9 billion debt.
Est-ce que le Québec peut continuer un autre 10 ans dans la même trajectoire?
Certainement pas.
This means the issue of Quebec's breakaway from Canada could return to the forefront if the almost decade-long reign of the Liberals comes to a close. It's the latest example of separatism spreading its wings globally in troublesome economic times. The separatists leading in the polls claim their short-term priority would be picking the economy up off its knees.
Je vous annonce aujourd'hui qu'un gouvernement du Parti québécois fera un virage majeur dans la politique économique du Québec. Je vous annonce 3 mesures pour protéger nos entreprises et nos sièges sociaux. Premièrement, nous allons changer la loi sur la Caisse de dépôt et de placement pour rétablir sa mission de développement économique au Québec. Deuxièmement, nous allons créer un fonds stratégique d'investissement de 10 milliards de dollars. Et enfin, nous allons modifier la loi sur les sociétés par action.
Vous savez, il est de notoriété publique que la famille des Marais exerce une influence importante en politique.
Il y a manifestement des liens possiblement incestueux dans le passé entre la Caisse de dépôt et la Power Corporation.
Pauline Marois has a long tradition of not following the rules of financial engagement that dates all the way back to 1991. While députée PQ for the Comté of Taillon, Madame Marois was named Ministre du Travail, where she immediately proceeded to the creation of the Fonds de solidarité de la Fédération des travailleurs du Québec, or FSFTQ. Marois, now head of the ministry, puts up on the table $10 million of publicly funded dollars to help kick off Quebec's Workers' Fund, and then proceeds by naming her husband, Claude Blanchette, as the head of the newly created Workers' Fund. In 1997, Marois, now Minister of Finance, yet again pulls a rabbit out of her financial hat by naming her spouse, Claude Blanchette, as the head of la Société Générale des Finances, or SGF. Under Blanchette's leadership, the SGF announces a loss of $500 million. Blanchette is shown the way out, but not before Marois secures a pension plan that entitles Blanchette to $80,000 a year for life. Marois, now newly elected Prime Minister of Quebec, has announced that she will change the rules of engagements in the fields of capital investments and the management of the Quebec Workers' Fund, adding that she will create a publicly financed investment fund worth $10 billion to help support Quebec's businesses and business leaders. Which begs the question, where will Claude Blanchet end up next? And just how much money will the Marois-Blanchet dynamic duo be able to swindle from the Quebec public funds?
Dans la catégorie « Prenez-nous pas pour des valises », Pauline Marois dernièrement nous a présenté son petit chalet de Charlevoix pour nous montrer à quel point elle est modeste et elle est comme tout le monde avec pas beaucoup d'argent. Eh bien, l'équipe d'Infoman pense que par souci d'intégrité, elle devrait présenter aussi son autre cabane. Équité et information oblige, l'équipe d'Infoman vous présente à grands coups de gravole le vrai chez Pauline.
Semble-t-il que ces enfants, c'est des tripeux de Tintin. Et type sur le manoir de Moulinsart dans Tintin.
L'immense réplique du château de Moulinsart, où réside notre Castafiore québécoise, est placée sur un terrain grand comme le Vermont, avec 2 lacs privés, des écuries, une piscine, une trampoline, rappelant le terrassement de Neverland.
Et Mme Marois insiste pour démentir les allusions de château.
Pas vraiment. Vous pouvez témoigner que c'est pas un palace?
The party leader says a referendum on Quebec's independence would only be held if there was complete confidence in a win. We might now be much closer to finding out.